Hi, sorry about the late submission. So basically, what we're going over is my literature review. What the literature had to say about the topic. The literature indicated that human interconnection is a contributing factor in recovery. Now, that's kind of the topic of my paper. Is basically examining the success with interconnection in recovery and the effect that isolation has on people. I plan to look on the effect that isolation has had on people in solitary confinement. I also plan on looking at the success of Oxford houses because there have been several studies done on Oxford houses, and they do indicate that a communal living situation in early recovery has substantially better uh, results statistically. So, all of that kind of builds and validates my topic. The overall consensus about this topic is that basically, like what I said, isolation leads to relapse and addiction, and connection leads to recovery, and especially connection in early recovery. I think that's specifically important, especially with the generation emerging now, especially with the opioid epidemic. A lot of these people who are, you know, really growing up addicted to drugs, they don't have the skills that everybody else has, and that needs to be taken into consideration when when we're suggesting treatment centers for these folks because they may not have the life skills, the coming of aging skills that other teens may have or young adults. That is to say. Um, Similarities. Just the Oxford House success rate really helped to validate what I was thinking, and that's, the success in interconnection in recovery. And a lot of that comes from my experience too, living with 8 housemates that graduated the same 2 to 3 year rehab program that I did. It provides a lot of support and a lot of accountability, and it's provide an opportunity for me to learn skills that I didn't know. Being an addict in recovery, entering my addiction in I was probably like 15, 16, and then that went on till 22 or so, and that whole time I didn't conquer any obstacles in the appropriate manner that my peers were doing. I My response was using, so I lack some of those social skills, and I've had to work extra hard to kind of learn those social skills that everybody else has. Even small things like paying bills, cooking meals, cleaning, adulting, if you will. That needs to be taken into consideration because a lot of people don't know that. We're dealing with the younger generation of addicts. Um, let's see, disagreements among the literature. This one I do want to point out the rat park experiment conducted in, I believe it was Canada, at a university where they put like just plain water and then they put water laced with cocaine, and like the rat that was just one without a community would become addicted to the substance laced water to the point of overdosing. But when they put these rats into rat park, there's like rat heaven, like there was all these things to do and all these social, there's all these other rats, and almost none of them ever used the cocaine laced water, although they had it available to them, just like the rat that was alone in the cage. Now that correlates to the psychological effect that takes a toll on inmates in the United States, and you know our citizens who are in solitary confinement. I mean, the psychological effect that it has is just horrible, and that also validates my point here. Any big gaps? Oh, what I was gonna say too, though, about Rat Park is basically when you put humans in like a rat park, they don't have the same experience. So like how many rich people are addicted to drugs? They have, all the things that people could want. They have their rat park, their human paradise, and they're still addicted to drugs. Look at the musicians, look at the actors. It really, financially speaking, does not discriminate. So I was thinking about it too, like in an abstract term. Maybe the isolation is not physiological, it's not tangible. Maybe the isolation is in the person's mind, because being rich could be lonely. I mean, there's all sorts of things and all sorts of problems that people don't talk about, that we don't know about, you know, and there's always other things going on, and that's what was not taken into account there. And then back to gaps, and was it generally researched pretty well? Um, the research is sporadic. I mean, it's hard to get long term studies on drug addicts just because of the relapse rate. But, what all this is led me, I am curious about Suboxone and buprenorphine. It's a partial opiate antagonist. Um, and Suboxone consists of buprenorphine and naloxone. And I'm curious if I can look at that and correlate that back to my topic. Because if a person is on Suboxone and it's a partial opiate antagonist, so their mu receptors are partially filled, but not all the way. So they're not detoxing, and it's a long-acting opiate, so it only needs to be taken once a day, whereas if they were on heroin, they would have to use every 4 to 6 hours. So I mean, giving somebody a complete substitute for their drug, how has that affected recovery and how we understand recovery? Because I feel like there's valid information within that, and it really does need to be examined, because we've never had a complete substitute for a drug before. And now we do. So is it the drug itself, or is it more than the drug? And what Suboxone shows to me is that it's more than the drug. Because if you're taking Suboxone, you're not going through physical withdrawal, you're not going through mental withdrawal, you're just fine to, go about your daily life, but people still relapse on heroin. So, I mean, I think that it's more than the substance. I think it's in the mind, and that relates back to the isolation in Rat Park. Yeah, so with that being said, I'm probably going to sign off here if I can figure out how to.